Good evening. I'm here to talk a little bit about regenerative agriculture tonight. And I hope most of y'all are familiar with Maker's Mark Distillery, but I suppose you probably wouldn't know that it's located on a 1,200 acre farm in central Kentucky. I've worked, I've worked at this distillery for over 32 years, and I'd like to talk about a sustainability vision that started almost as many years ago. My ancestors came into Kentucky in the late 1700s, and I still live on part of that original farm. So I would guess it's really still a big part of who I am. My grandfather, he shared years ago that if we would take care of the land, that it would take care of us. And in middle school, I joined Future Farmers of America, and that's where I learned that agriculture is much more than just planting and harvesting. It's about science and about business and passion. And so, let me get myself together here a second, a little bit nervous. What, but back then, we really thought that soil was simply decaying minerals that held plants up so they could gather photosynthesis. But now, obviously, we know that in a single handful of healthy soil, there's more living organisms than there are people on the planet. And when I was in high school, I co-opted at our local soil conservation district. And that's where they help farmers implement sustainability practices on their land. And that's when I knew what I wanted to be when I grew up. I wanted to be a soil conservation officer. So I went and got my degree in soil science and natural resources, and I was ready to dig in. But unfortunately, just before I graduated, there was a federal hiring freeze that put a hold on my career in soil conservation. But I needed a job, and just a few miles down the road was this distillery, Maker's Mark. And they had an opening, so I applied. And so when I went to the distillery, let me compose myself here again. So when I went to the distillery, I'd worked there just over a year, and I got my first opportunity to interview at the Soil Conservation Service. And that's when I realized I was going to make a lot less money, plus I was going to have to relocate. So I decided to say goodbye to my childhood dream. And at that time, the distillery, it rested on about 300 acres of rolling hills and creek bottoms that were being leased to local farmers. And I couldn't help but notice that these tenants, they weren't treating the land like it was their own. For example, one farmer, he plowed up an entire hillside, and a heavy rain came and washed all the topsoil out across the roadway. It was heartbreaking, and I'd never seen anything like that before. But when I shared with Maker's Mark what had happened, they immediately ended all the land leases. And in my spare time, they allowed me to implement practices to improve and restore the soil going forward. All right, let me. So again, we began improving the soil, and at that point, I started experimenting with some heirloom varieties of wheat, hoping that we would be able to maybe improve the flavor. And everything escalated in 2020 when I reached out to Gabe Brown, who you probably know is a pioneer in regenerative agriculture. And he explained to me that the future of farming it required more than conserving and sustaining the status quo, that the soil actually needed restoration and needed to be regenerated. So leaning into Gabe and other innovative farmers, we went out and implemented all the soil principles, focusing on the entire ecosystem. And within just a year, 2 years in, we had been certified third party as a regenerative farm. So shortly afterward, we reached out to the local corn and wheat producers in the community, and we invited them to join us on that journey. And soon we had about a handful of farmers that were regeneratively managing over 50,000 acres. And so those, from there, again, my mind is racing different directions. So from there, again, we invited them, and they came along for the journey. And then in 2023, we filled our first barrel of third-party regenerative certified liquid. So that was an exciting moment for us. And how we justified that was we experimented and distilled some varieties of grain that we'd grown on the farm, and it showed us that true taste really started in the soil. So from there, we realized that, again, probably the best way for anyone to improve the soil health crisis that was in the world was using these regenerative principles. So we were happy to we recently founded the Maker's Mark Regenerative Alliance, and it's to serve as a catalyst for global change. And the mission of the alliance is to support the transformation of regenerative agriculture beyond our own supply chain. And so the focus on it is to actually support the farmers and ranchers that supply the hospitality industry. And so the goal or the vision that we have is to transform 1 million acres. So folks, that's like 5 times the size of New York City, right? And recently, earlier this spring, we actually created our first ever new brand at Maker's Mark called Star Hill Farm Whiskey, and hopefully you'll get to taste that shortly. But that whiskey was actually produced from seed to sip on Star Hill Farm. So it's a spirit that celebrates nature as the maker. And so get this, guys, we're actually now donating all the profits from this new bottle sales into fund the Regenerative Alliance. So now we're able to actually support the education and implementation around the world. That's something that I never dreamt we would be able to do, proving that healthy soils produce the most nutrient-dense foods, not to mention the most flavorful whiskey. So I just wanted to share again that childhood dream that I had to support local farmers is not only being fulfilled, but at a scale greater than I ever could have imagined. Because not only am I able to help our local grain partners here in Kentucky, but also now farmers from around the world, proving again that healthy soil creates the most flavorful bourbon. So if I could leave you with the challenge tonight, it would just be to discover what you're really passionate about. Go and do something, even if it's small, because we're never going to make a big difference if we don't first make a small one.